She divorced me by email while I was deployed and stole everything we built. Before I begin, let me ask you something quietly personal. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that even when things felt off, you gave them the benefit of the doubt? Have you ever built a life with someone only to find out, while you were holding the line for your country, that they were erasing you behind your back? What you're about to hear isn't just about heartbreak. It's about what happens when you give everything and someone else decides that's the perfect time to take what's left. I received the divorce papers by email while I was deployed near Mosul. I'd been gone for 4 months running recon missions and sleeping on and off between patrols when Claire, my wife of 13 years, decided she was done. I was sitting alone, back from a late shift, when the subject line flashed across my screen. Let's handle this like adults. I thought it was about something minor at first, bills maybe. Instead, the message inside was short and surgical. 3 sentences. Claire had already filed for divorce. She had already emptied our joint bank account. And she had already moved her new boyfriend Ryan into the house we'd shared in Kelowna. That was it. That was how it ended. I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop, grabbed my towel, and walked to the showers. The water was barely warm, spitting out in pulses from an old metal head that echoed inside the stall. I stood there, longer than usual, rinsing off the dust of the day, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. I didn't cry, didn't break anything, didn't speak. I dressed, reported for my next duty, and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my cot that night, I opened my laptop again. My reply was just one word. Understood. I didn't need to say anything more. Claire had made her choice, and I wasn't going to waste my breath asking her why. Outside the tent, the wind carried the smell of diesel and desert. It was just past 3 a.m., and most of the guys were asleep or halfway through their rotations. Inside, the air was thick with body heat and the quiet creaks of sleeping men. I sat there for a long time, letting the blue screen reflect off the walls, off my hands, off the metal of my watch. Then I shut it down. Cooper, the guy bunking across from me, noticed something. "You good, man?" he asked, eyes still locked on the paperback in his hands. I nodded. "Yeah, just some stuff back home." He didn't press. In the forces, you don't always need to talk to understand something's gone sideways. He gave me a nod and went back to his book. That was that. Truth is, I wasn't blindsided. Not really. Claire had started changing long before that email arrived. Subtle at first, less curious about my day. More time at the dental office answering phones, gym visits that never seemed to leave a mark. New clothes, new friends, new passwords. I didn't confront her. That's not how I operate. But I saw it. I felt it. So I made some quiet preparations of my own. A few weeks before deployment, I opened a separate bank account under my name at a different branch. Nothing flashy, just enough to carve out a space that was mine. I rerouted a portion of my military pay there, small enough she wouldn't notice. Rented a small storage unit outside town, and secured our legal documents, my birth certificate, our marriage license, the deed to our home, which was in my name thanks to the Veterans Mortgage Benefit. I placed my mother's silver, my father's service medals, and my own keepsakes there. Not to hide them, just to protect them, just in case. The night before, I deployed Claire, hugged me at the airport. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me to stay safe. Her eyes were dry. Her arms were loose. It felt like she was saying goodbye to a colleague, not a husband. I should have known. Deep down, I think I did. But I held on to a thin thread of hope that maybe I was wrong, that maybe distance would remind her of what we'd built, that she'd wait, that she still believed in us. She didn't. And now here I was, 9,000 kilometers from home, holding a truth I didn't want, but couldn't avoid. My marriage was over. My savings were gone. My house was no longer my home. And someone else was drinking from my coffee mug while I carried a rifle under foreign stars. But she didn't know one thing. I never start fights, but I've never lost one either. And this time, I was going to finish what she'd started. There's a specific kind of silence that hits when you realize someone has planned your erasure down to the decimal. Not just the emotional damage. The logistics, the paperwork, the timing. Claire hadn't just left. She'd strategized. And when I saw what came next, I realized just how far she'd gone. 2 weeks after that email, I was sitting in the mess hall, spooning into lukewarm shepherd's pie when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't think much of it. Probably a spam text or an automated base notification. But it wasn't. It was from our bank. The joint account, what little had been left, was now nearly empty. Another transfer. $91,000 gone. Account balance $19.42. I stared at the number. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Everything around me, the low drone of conversation, the clatter of boots on concrete, even the tinny music someone played too loud, faded. I clicked through to the full account history. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been happening for weeks. Small withdrawals first, then bolder ones. The big transfers began the day after I deployed. I set my tray aside, stood up, and walked out into the cold desert air. Didn't speak, just moved steady and silent, like I was walking into fog. I stood alone by the shipping containers behind the mess hall, watching the sand drift across the lot like snow in reverse. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even angry. I was calculating. That night, I called the bank from the satellite phone room. The clerk confirmed what I already suspected. Claire had full access and had been draining our accounts since I left. Not just checking. Savings, too. All of it. Gone. After the call, I didn't go back to bed. I walked the perimeter of camp instead. Quietly, slowly, processing. The people around me were laughing, making video calls home, talking to their kids and wives. Normal life happening all around me, while mine was being disassembled in real time. Cooper found me standing outside the barracks near sunrise. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, staring at the sand. After a while, he said, "Heard you look like a ghost at dinner." I didn't look at him. "My wife emptied our accounts," I said. "Moved her boyfriend into our house. Served me divorce papers while I was still in uniform." He didn't say sorry, didn't offer advice. Just asked, "What's your plan?" That question hit harder than I expected. because I didn't have one yet, but I knew I'd need one. Fast. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out my old laptop, the one Claire probably forgot I still had access to, and logged into our home security system. A few years back, I'd installed cameras around the house. Nothing fancy, just enough to feel safe when we were away. Turns out, they were still connected. The footage loaded, and there he was, Ryan. He was walking my dog around the backyard like he owned the place, wearing my team sweatshirt, using the coffee mug Claire had bought me after my promotion. Claire was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter I had built myself on leave, laughing. I didn't feel heartbreak watching them. I felt something colder, clearer, focused. I made a list on my phone that night, just one word per line. Call Tom, lawyer. Check title, house still under my name. Confirm VA benefit rules. Claire can't refinance alone. Secure pension access. Monitor security cams. Save footage. Prepare exit strategy. At 0500 before morning inspection, I sent Tom an email with the subject, Need legal help. Discreet and urgent. He replied less than an hour later. Call me when you're back. Secure line only. By then I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to confront her yet. I was going to wait, watch, gather, and when the time came, I wouldn't just take my life back. I'd make sure she understood what it meant to cross someone who doesn't fight loud, but fights smart. Coming back home without telling anyone is a strange kind of freedom. You arrive without expectation, without fanfare. You blend into the background of your own life. That's what I needed. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted answers. I landed in Vancouver under a different name and drove east toward Kelowna. Checked into a small motel on the edge of town. Cash payment. Nothing traceable. The walls were thin and the heater rattled when it kicked on, but it was quiet. I hadn't felt quiet in months. I called Tom from the parking lot the next morning. We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between his office and where I was staying. When he walked in, he looked me over like a medic checking for injuries. You look like hell, he said. I nodded. Feels about right. We didn't waste time. Tom slid a thick folder across the table. Inside was a mess of documents, scans, statements, bank records. But one sheet was on top. It was a refinance application for our house, and my signature was on it. Only it wasn't. The loops in the M were too tight. The middle initial was wrong. The slant of the writing was off. Whoever forged it had practiced, but not enough. She did this, I asked, even though I already knew. Tom nodded. 3 months ago, she refinanced the house for over $330. Took the equity out. Your signature was required because of the mortgage being tied to your veteran housing benefit. I leaned back in the booth. My pulse didn't race. It settled. I was beyond surprise. There's more, he added. She listed Ryan as the co-applicant. That part hit differently. She didn't just move him in. She gave him legal claim to something I earned in uniform. I took a slow breath, staring out the window. Does he even have a clean record? Tom opened another page. 2 DUIs. A fraud charge in 2019. And someone by the name of Daniel Grayson is linked to multiple quick sale real estate deals involving Ryan. I turned back. Who's Grayson Real Estate Agent? Specializes in cash-only deals, lowball listings, flips. You see where this is going? I nodded. They weren't just trying to take the house. They were trying to sell it fast, cheap, and under the radar. I wasn't just dealing with a broken marriage. This was an operation. How many deals between them, I asked. 3 in the past 2 years that I can find. Always the same setup. Woman going through a split. Property undervalued. Buyer shows up within a week. And Ryan walks away. I stared down at the folder. It wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was insult. Claire may have been manipulated. Or maybe she was in on it. At this point, it didn't matter. The damage was being done in my name, with my home, my paperwork, my history. What are my options? I asked. Tom didn't hesitate. First, we report the forgery, file a formal complaint with the bank. Then we freeze any ongoing refinance payouts. You can also notify the county that no sale or title transfer can happen without your consent. And you should know. He paused, choosing his words. The RCMP has a financial crimes unit. If we can show a pattern, they'll take this seriously. I nodded. Let's start. The next day, I drove by the house, parked a Buick down the street. Ryan's truck wasn't there. Claire's car was. I didn't approach. I just watched. It looked like the same house I'd worked overtime to pay for, the same door I'd painted navy blue one summer, the same flower bed I'd built for her outside the kitchen window. But it wasn't mine anymore, not in the way that mattered. I drove straight to the bank, met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance. I handed over my military ID, my driver's license, and a sample of my real signature. I showed him the forgery. His face paled. We'll need to report this immediately. I understand, I said. I've already filed a police report. That night, Claire texted me. Who have you been talking to at the bank? Ryan said someone was asking questions. I didn't answer. The next morning, I visited the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance, issued a formal freeze on the property. No changes could be made without my written and in-person consent. I left with the receipt in my pocket and steel in my gut. Later that day, she called. I let it ring, then voicemail. Mark, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. Same phrase as her email. I didn't reply. Tom called that afternoon. They froze the refinance payout. We have a window now. But we're not done. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? Yeah. It's in my name. He got pulled over this morning. Suspended license. DUI. They impounded the vehicle. I said nothing. He also had prescription pads in the glove box from the dental office Claire works at. I closed my eyes. They weren't blank. It took me a moment to speak. She's stealing prescription pads. Looks that way. Police are investigating. I stood in the motel room, phone in hand, staring at the wall. My chest didn't burn. My hands didn't shake. But I felt something shift, something heavy. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was criminal. And I wasn't walking away. There comes a moment when even your own story stops feeling personal. When the betrayal becomes evidence, the pain becomes paperwork. That moment hit me sitting in a cold, windowless meeting room with two federal agents staring at me like I wasn't just a man who got cheated on. I was the lead witness in a case bigger than either of us had expected. I'd contacted the RCMP's Financial Crime Division, but the response came from higher. Two agents from a federal investigative unit flew out to meet me, Patel and Donovan. They didn't waste time with condolences, didn't offer sympathetic smiles. They asked for the files. I handed over the folder. Tom and I had built copies of the forged refinance application, the bank statements, the property transfer documents, security camera footage, all of it. Agent Patel leaned in, eyes scanning line by line, like she was reading a language only she and the courts could understand. "This helps," she said, "a lot. But it's not just about what she did to you. It's the pattern." Donovan nodded. "We've had eyes on Ryan and Grayson for a while. You just gave us the cleanest chain of evidence we've seen." I didn't feel proud, just cold, focused. "What about Claire?" I asked. They glanced at each other. "We're still determining her level of involvement," Patel said. "Did she know what Ryan was doing? Did she benefit from it knowingly? Did she forge the documents? Or just sign off without asking questions?" "She forged my name," I said quietly. "That's not a mistake." "We agree," Donovan replied, his voice low and measured. "But intent matters. She's either a manipulated accomplice or a willing one. We're going to find out." They asked more questions. I answered every one. Dates, emails, bank transfers, footage timestamps. When it was over, Patel slid her card across the table. "Stay in touch," she said. "And please, don't contact her or him. Let us handle the rest." I walked out into the parking lot with the sun sharp in my eyes. The air smelled like late winter cold damp still. Somewhere across town, Claire was probably sipping coffee, wondering if the text she sent the night before had landed. I hadn't replied. I wouldn't. That evening, I drove past the house again. Same street, same mailbox, same flower beds. Ryan's truck was parked outside. It looked cleaner than I remembered it. Maybe Claire had washed it for him. Maybe it was just the snow melt. I sat half a block away, engine off, headlights down, watching. My phone buzzed. "Claire, we need to talk. In person, please. Meet me at City Park tomorrow morning." I didn't answer, but I showed the message to Tom the next morning over stale eggs and burnt toast. "Don't go," he said flatly. "You're not there to comfort her confusion. She made choices. Let the system respond." "I wasn't planning to," I told him. "But I want to know what she does when she thinks I will." We pulled up to the house an hour before the meeting time, parked across the street out of view. At 9:45 a.m., Claire walked out with purpose, got in her car, and drove off, likely toward the park. At 10:01, a white SUV pulled into the driveway. Real estate logo on the side. Daniel Grayson. He stepped out in a gray jacket, clipboard in hand. Ryan came to the door to greet him. They talked briefly, then went inside. Tom turned to me. "We following them?" "No need," I said. I pulled out my phone and opened the security feed. I'd never disconnected the system. Interior and exterior, every camera still streaming to my cloud. Grayson stood in our living room, pointing toward the fireplace, snapping photos. Ryan leaned against the wall, casually sipping from a mug that used to be mine. I turned the volume up. "We'll list at 470, Grayson said. "Buyer offers 420. Everyone's happy." "And the husband?" Ryan asked. "Claire says he's being difficult," Grayson replied. "But military guys are all the same. They make noise. They've got deployments. He'll take a settlement to make it go away." I turned to Tom. His phone was already recording the live feed. I forwarded the link to Agent Patel with a short message: "Happening now." 30 minutes later, the house was surrounded by government vehicles. Agents in jackets swarmed the driveway. Grayson and Ryan were both cuffed and walked out in silence. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. A woman down the street took photos with her phone. Claire arrived minutes later. She stepped out of her car and froze. Her mouth opened slightly, and she raised her hands to cover it. I watched her stare at the front lawn as two agents carried boxes of documents out of the home. "What happens to her?" I asked Patel later over the phone. "That depends," she said gently, "on what she knew and what you want." I didn't answer right away. I looked out the motel window, watching snow fall in slow circles onto the windshield of my rental car. For a long time, I didn't feel anything. Then slowly, something settled. Something final. "I just want what's right," I said. And this was only the beginning. Some endings don't feel like victory. They just feel like stillness after too much noise. That's what the final days of the investigation brought. Not celebration. Just space enough to exhale without flinching. Claire agreed to a settlement. She returned the money, signed over her share of the house, waived any rights to my pension. In exchange, I didn't press charges. Her lawyer argued she'd been misled, that Ryan had manipulated her into thinking I was hiding assets, that she thought the refinance was legal. Maybe that was true, or maybe it was the story she told herself to sleep at night. Either way, I wasn't interested in punishing her. Not anymore. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that email in the desert. No trial, no drawn-out hearings, just signatures, cold ink on legal paper. 1 month later, I sold the house. Couldn't stay there. Too many ghosts, too many questions in the drywall. I used the money to buy a small cabin on 10 acres outside Revelstoke. 2 bedrooms, a wood stove, a creek in the back that runs clear year-round. No neighbors within shouting distance. I named my new dog Scout, German Shepherd, loyal in ways humans sometimes aren't. I retired early. 20 years in the forces was enough. I'd served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Latvia. I'd trained recruits and buried friends. I'd learned how to stay calm in firefights, how to sleep through shelling, and how to find meaning in silence. Now, I learned how to make coffee slowly, how to mend fence posts, how to sleep with both eyes closed again. Sometimes I thought about Claire, not with anger, not even regret, just distance, like someone I'd known in another life. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Victoria, working front desk at another clinic. Starting over. She made her choices. I made mine. One day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a note written by hand. You don't know me, but you saved my home. My husband's in the Navy. Ryan and Grayson tried to pull the same thing on me. The FBI told me your case broke it open. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to walk away. There was no name, just those words. I read it twice. Then I pinned it to my fridge. On days when the memories came back too sharp, when I smelled a cologne like Ryan's at the hardware store, or saw a kitchen backsplash that looked like the one I installed for Claire, I'd read that letter again. And remember that not everything was lost. Sometimes people think strength means staying in a fight, but sometimes real strength is knowing when to rebuild instead of retaliate. Grayson was sentenced to 12 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Ryan got 8. Claire never faced criminal charges, but she did sign a sworn affidavit admitting to the forged signature. The system for once worked. And me, I wake up to the sound of birds now instead of boots. I split wood. I fix what's broken. I don't rush. I don't explain. I've learned how to enjoy peace not because it was given to me, but because I earned it, inch by inch, through the quiet decision not to let betrayal be the end of my story. What Claire didn't know is that I was never the man she thought she could erase. I was the man who didn't need noise to win. And sometimes, when I stand on the porch as the sun folds into the trees and the wind rolls off the mountain, I realize everything they tried to take from me is exactly what they can never touch again.